I'm starting to realize that I'm essentially entering the unk stage of life. I'm getting a little bit older, although aging like fine wine, and clearly I'm still the man. But obviously, the younger generation who watches these videos might not understand how things used to work when I was a kid. And I feel like that's a very important thing to sort of set up for this video because there used to be this phenomenon within the video game industry where when a console was out on the market for a couple of years or so, you would start to see these things called price drops, in which the console was not selling for the same price that it sold for on day one. Obviously, manufacturing became easier and cheaper for these consoles to make, and companies were starting to look towards the next generation. Game prices would also come down. You would see Player's Choice, Platinum Hits, greatest hits editions of these games, where they would re-release at a discounted price once they hit 1 million units sold, and games would be cheaper, controllers would be cheaper. Then, when a console generation ended, you saw drastic discounts. You could pick up the games and the system for dirt cheap because they were old. Everyone was moving on to the next greatest thing. And we don't see that anymore. If anything, we're starting to see the inverse of that. And I know that there's going to be, economic experts on Twitter and in the comments section of this video telling me that I am wrong and I'm viewing this from a wrong perspective because I don't know, they went to college and took some courses or something like that. And sure, maybe my viewpoint is a little bit different than your viewpoint, but also I kind of came up in a different manner than you did. I obviously learned things on my own instead of having somebody kind of teach me them, and there's no right or wrong thing. Some people need different sorts of tools in order to understand various things, but you got to remember, do you necessarily believe everything that everyone tells you? Nintendo is a company right now that, yes, they just released the Nintendo Switch 2. You would think everything would be on a high. Everyone would be happy. We got a new system. We got new games. But you got to remember, there was some drama leading up to it. We, of course, had the pre-order delay situation. Then we had a price increase on accessories that were already manufactured and probably already sitting in a warehouse because of world economic conditions. That comfort blanket that people can always lay their head on because it's always there when you need to explain why the price of something is going up. This isn't even taking into account situations like the Mario Kart World thing, the game key card situation, things that I'm actually somewhat okay with in various forms, but other people are not okay with. But yesterday's news from Nintendo, if you're justifying this, like, you have to understand that you are essentially a fanboy. You've no longer become objective. You've no longer become a free thinker. You are a consumer of what Nintendo tells you to think, and there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but you just kind of need to accept that. Because yesterday, Nintendo made an announcement that their the pricing update for the Switch 1, the system that came out, back in 2017. Now, right now, this is for our Canadian brethrens only in Canada above the United States. Y'all get screwed to begin with anyways. Y'all have been getting screwed on prices for a very, very long time because your taxes and stuff are sort of higher than that. Higher than, they usually are in the United States. But now, if you want a Switch 1, you're going to be getting screwed on that. And essentially, you'll be getting screwed on a Switch 2 as well. Pricing for the original Nintendo Switch family of systems and products in Canada will change based on market conditions. Oh, look at that. That is such a comforting blanket to have. Let me move myself here so that you can actually see everything. There you go. These include Nintendo Switch OLED model, Nintendo Switch Lite, physical and digital Switch games, and Switch accessories. Other Nintendo products, including Amiibo and Nintendo Switch Online memberships, will also experience price changes. Please note, the pricing change does not apply to the Switch 2 system, accessories, or software. Pricing information specific to the Canada market will be shared on their website on August 1st for that stuff. So that's still coming, okay? That is still looming on the horizon here. But you look at this and immediately you would think, because you're a normal individual, they're talking about price decreases, right? Like prices are going to get cheaper right? Because these are old systems, these are old games. But no, that's not the case. The price is going up because of market conditions. And please, I know that there are going to be people in the comments section. Well, it's because of tariffs and, you know, changes in the economic world. Okay, you know what? I'm going to entertain that. Although as the unk, you know, just call me the unk of video games from now on. Tariffs and economic conditions have always been a thing. This has always been a thing in the world. These tariffs change. Economic conditions change. The yen rises. The yen falls. The euro rises. The euro falls. The dollar rises. The dollar falls. So I understand that there are things like inflation. I understand like there are things like tariffs that can impact certain things. But you have to remember something very important and very crucial in all of these discussions. If we were talking about a situation in which we were looking at record low profits, record low sales for video games from major companies, then sure, I could understand changing prices to go up higher because you need money to operate and create different things. But are you seeing that? Or are you seeing record profits, record-breaking profits for all these companies? So you can't eat any of the cost because you need more record-breaking profits? Now, why would that be? You would think that there would be a baseline expectation of where a company needs to make money, and then everything after that is just kind of additional. Yay, now we got more to invest in our company. Oh, that's right. You have investors. You see, people, I don't understand why people are like, I understand you don't like the political climate. You don't like the president or the person in charge of Canada. I don't know what the prime minister. I think it's the prime minister of Canada. You don't like this, that, or the other. That's fine. I completely understand that. Everyone's allowed to have their opinion on stuff like this, but this has been a thing that has always happened. But the large rise of the video game industry and the, entry point for people to start investing into the video game industry, investors want to see as much money as possible. So now it's no longer just about the company and what the profits they're making are, it's what the investors are making. And if the investors are not happy with the product or the return of investment that they are starting to see on their investment, then they're going to start to pull out of the company, thus giving the company less capital. But if the company is already making record profits, do they necessarily need to be a company that is publicly traded? It's a catch-22, but it all comes down to greed. If Sony were to do this, there'd be videos all over the place, and there have been. We did it for Xbox. We're going to do it for Nintendo. A lot of Nintendo people will sit there and tell you every day, oh, there's great Nintendo Switch 2 news, but they won't tell you about the underbelly of situations happening like this, and I find it very bizarre because it is worth having a conversation about. But one thing I really don't like about this, you thought I was going to wrap this video up. I have a long ways to go, pal. So if you need to go take a whiz or something like that, go ahead and pause the video and, drain the main vein, or if you're one of the 6 women who watches me, do what you got to do. But let's go back to something that is said here, because this is essentially a lie. It doesn't apply to the Nintendo Switch 2 accessories. First off, how are you going to raise the price of digital games and stuff? Like, oh my God, that's so annoying. But it says that doesn't apply to the Nintendo Switch 2 system accessories or software. But that is a lie, because remember, Nintendo Switch Online is its own thing. When I purchased my Nintendo Switch 2, all I did was transfer over my account to from my Switch 1 to my Switch 2. I didn't change anything. I didn't pay a different price. I didn't have to update anything. That Nintendo Switch Online account on the Switch 1 is the exact same as it is on the Switch 2. Now, you do get bonus features on the Switch 2, but it is the same exact service from the Switch 1. You have access to everything on the Switch 1 along with additional things on the Switch 2. So if NSO is going up in price, then yes, it does impact the Nintendo Switch 2. It does impact the price of things here. And we actually got a Reddit post in which somebody broke all of this down, because if you go over to Nintendo of Canada's thing and you go to update your pricing, it actually shows it in the NSO pricing membership. So, fun fact, a year of NSO and EP family membership now costs as much as Mario Kart World. Nintendo Switch Online pricing. So it's from $4.99 to $5.99 for 1 month, $9.99 to $11.99 for 3 months, $24.99 to $29.99 for 12 months. A family membership has also gone up $5 from $44.99 to $49.99. But you got to remember, there are specific features and quality of life things that you can only do with the expansion pack. Expansion pack, $63.99 to $69.99. $99.99 for the family membership to $109.99. Now, I know what you're saying to yourself, RGT, this isn't a huge price increase, blah, blah, blah. Okay, because honestly, a $10 price increase is not the end of the world. However, I have to go back to my point that I was making before. This is a digital service. You could sit there and say market conditions, tariffs, this, that, and the other on physical goods all day. And you know what? I'll listen to you. I will listen to you. There is no physical aspect of Nintendo Switch Online that would require a price increase based on market conditions, unless one of two things is happening. Thing one, people aren't signing up for NSO. We're getting all the, we need to make more money on NSO. People aren't signing up. Our company's not in a good spot right now. We need to make some money. We need to generate some revenue. One of the avenues we can do is a price increase on NSO. But I have to go back to what I just said before. We're seeing record profits and record sales from all of these companies year after year after year after year, especially other adventures that they are doing and business ventures that they are making more capital than ever with video games and their properties that come from video games. So option one doesn't really make sense. Well, what is option two? Greed. I do not understand the justification for this. A physical good, I will listen to you. I will listen to you and I will take that into consideration because I'm not someone who just has an opinion and then refuses to listen to anyone else. But when you're talking about a digital product, something that does not have a physical counterpart, because you could even say things like, oh, well, if a digital game has a physical version of the game, then, obviously they would have to do something to make the prices even or stuff like that. They obviously don't have to do that, but sure, I'll listen to you on that. But something that is all digital that requires no physical sort of service, no, I'm not going to listen to you on that because there is no justification. It's not like, our server costs went up. Who cares? At what point in time does a company take accountability for themselves and realize you can't nickel and dime people to the point of where they cannot afford to support your company anymore? Because that's what we're kind of starting to go towards. It's not about the $10 price increase because of from $60 to $70 for a game. It's not about the $10 or $5 price increase of NSO Online. But all of these things start to add up. And when you're in a situation where, I swear to God, do not bring up inflation, please, because the economy, the price of things like food and housing and all that sort of stuff, all these sort of things were much lower. You could make less and live better. Okay? I don't understand why people just pull up the inflation calculator. They're like, haha, I've got you. And I'm like, no, you don't. When I asked my parents what they paid for the house that we lived in high school, I wanted to throw up on myself. I wanted to vomit. I was like, are you serious, dude? That house was very nice. My sophomore year of high school, Dad was making pretty decent money and we got a nice house. And I was like, bro, that's all you paid for? That's insane. Like, you have to understand that video games are entertainment. This is not a necessity. Housing, food, all that sort of stuff are necessities. But then you even get into the whole thing where you see McDonald's and Burger King all having record profits, but yet we have to raise our prices. We have to raise our prices to appease our shareholders. And we need more money. I need bigger bonuses. Like, companies are not your friend. Stop treating them like your friend. If there is something you do not like, you are allowed to talk about it. You are allowed to talk about positive things and negative things. You're allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to be inquisitive about things. And if you're not allowed to ask questions, there is a reason why a company does not want you to ask a question, because they are hiding something in that sort of situation. I understand real world economic conditions. I understand tariffs. I understand that tariffs could be changing potentially, but we saw a drastic change in tariffs, and then we saw a resolution a few weeks later to where Xbox went ahead and raised the price of everything, and Nintendo did the same, yet we didn't see a drop after the tariffs kind of changed. Well, it could just be a temporary tariff. Right. It could just be a temporary tariff on both sides. So why would you immediately increase prices but not want to decrease prices after the situation has resolved itself for a period of time, and then you can increase the prices again? Nothing is set in stone here. A company will give an MSRP, the manufacturer suggested resale or retail price of a product, and they could change that on a whim, much like they're doing here. But the problem is the whim seems to always be going up instead of down. And with the rise of companies starting to have record profits, the rise of investors in these companies, it's going to get very ugly before it gets better. You're going to see less spending on the video game industry after a while, because you can only get so much out of people until they get to a point where they're like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I got to feed my kids. I got to put gas in my car. I got to pay my rent or my mortgage or something like that. I don't know, man. I don't know. But I'm sure people are going to disagree with me on this, and that's fine, dude. Like I said, everyone grew up differently. Everyone has a different path in life, and everyone has different opinions on things. I don't think anyone truly knows the actual answer. I may be wrong, but I doubt it. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.